Marishka Hargitay, and welcome to Visceral Musings. My name is Cody Reed, I am your host, and it is Wednesday. That means it is time for the Season 2 premiere of this little podcast that I came up with all on my own. Whoa, indeed, B. Arthur. And now that I got a soundboard, it is over for you motherfuckers.
Oh, bitch mama.
That's right. My guest today was a total sweetheart and a tender lover. If you don't already know him from his recent appearance on the Desert Rats podcast, then boy, are you in for a treat. His name is Josh Reidhead, and we talked about video games. We talked about whether or not he's circumcised. We talked about abandoning religion, but more so than all of that, we talked about the last 5 episodes of Spider-Man, the animated series. We even talked about finding Spider-Man in everyone. And so, man, if this episode is any indication of how this season's gonna go, then it's gonna be better than ever. I couldn't be more excited to show it to you guys, so without further ado, let's get right to it. Spider-Man gets sucked into a cosmic sphincter, jorking your peanuts, growing up with enormous penis syndrome.
Also, I'm Flop Gang.
Beef walk.
Beef Walk. I refer to him as the Twilight Boy, like old man balls.
I'm in Spider-Man's marital problems and shit like. Hello and welcome to another episode of Visceral Musings. My name is Cody Reed, and today my guest puts the lit in clitoris and the rad in comrade. You know him from his recent Desert Rats appearance. His name is Josh Reidhead. Josh, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Thank you for being in my guest bedroom.
Of course. I love it. It's gorgeous in here.
It's a cool setup. I've never done it like this before. I've only done it one other time in my kitchen and another time in the garage. So this is a first.
Listen, it's great. I love it.
Your girlfriend has numerous times and consensually, I would say, penetrated me. So on that topic, circumcised?
I am, yeah. Unfortunately. Yeah.
All right, there we go.
Fist bump. Hell yeah.
There we go. No, your girlfriend is Allison Tippett. She's a tattoo artist.
Yes.
Yes,
is.
and she does beautiful work.
She really does.
I have her visibly penetrated me, I might even add. Has she done any work on you?
She has. So, I mean, I was like her first test
guinea
dummy
pig.
To a degree, other than herself. So, to my understanding, her first tattoos were stick and pokes on her. And then she sort of lured me into the idea of getting tattoos. And she tattooed herself quite a bit. But I have some Star Wars stuff.
Oh, I didn't see that.
I have some Legend of Zelda stuff on my leg right here. She did these recently. So she did this. This is from the album cover for Foster the People. And then Blue Regard Q Kazoo from Foster's.
Oh, that's good.
Down there.
Yeah.
But she's gonna get me covered. I'm one of those people that when it comes to tattoos, I want to like set it all out prior.
Yeah.
And just go, this is exactly what I'm get from the first to the last. Because, yeah.
She put my jawbreaker on me.
There you go. Your job stopper. Hell yeah, man.
Yeah, that's where I was going with that one.
That's sick.
Yeah, and then she did.
Which is so awesome. I love the moon.
She did it. She did so, like we talked about it, and I was like, I hate blue tattoos, and I pointed to something that she had that was blue. I was like, if you do something like that, then I'm down for it.
Right.
But my first real question for every single one of my guests is, who are you and what do you do?
Oh man, I've been thinking about this a lot. Well, I'm Josh. I am a student at Arizona State University. I am an aspiring educator. I'm not quite there yet. I've got I've dipped my toes in it a bit. And I'm trying. I'm going to schools and such and experiencing being a teacher. Just a 27-year-old dork, man, just doing my thing.
Isn't that weird to think of?
Yeah, dude. It honestly is.
We're 27.
We're 27.
Yeah.
Man. We're 27.
You know what's funny, as I was thinking about this, a lot of the time when I have people on, it's usually somebody that I, like, a lot of the time it's people I know. Sometimes it's people that I've met that I don't know personally, which is kind of the case today. But it's weird because we grew up together, but separate.
Yeah.
Like we had 2 separate experiences at the same time in the same place, and then now here we are.
Right. No, and it would always like sort of intertwine a bit at like different points.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, hey, we were like friends for a bit here.
Yeah.
We were friends for a bit here. And it's just one of those things where we'd like touch base. But in terms of like individuals I've known throughout my life, like I'm pretty sure you were there like first grade and stuff.
I was just thinking
you talked about like in one of your past episodes, Mrs. Seaman, which bless her heart, she's great. But I was in that class too. I was listening to that episode and I was like, dang, me and Cody have known each other for a while.
Yeah, I broke down crying.
Oh man,
my
dude.
first day.
The best of us did. Okay.
I remember one time, this girl Desiree, she told you to get your ass down the slide.
Told me?
Yes. She cussed, and then somebody told on her. I remember that, and then I remember somebody was telling the story, and somebody said that you were crying. And then you said, and it was like in a joking way, but you said, I wasn't crying. I just had something in my eye. I laughed my ass off at that because I already knew that was like a played out trope, but to hear a 6-year-old kid say it,
oh man,
I still think about that in your pre-puberty voice. I can hear you say
and
that.
it wasn't comedic. It was dead honest. Like this is my
no, it was a joke. It was good.
Okay,
it was good delivery
dude.
too.
Hell yeah,
I remember that so specifically.
Dang, that's a cool story. I wish I remembered that one.
So my next question for you is, I have never seen you catch a fly with chopsticks, but I know that you have reflexes like a motherfucker because you can play video games really well. So I wanted to know what your relationship was with video games and video game culture.
Oh man, that is a great question. Well, this is...
was that a callback?
This is such a callback because it's one of those things now I'm flipping through my memories because I want to get it right. When I was younger, I dealt with, and I don't know if you remember this, but I dealt with sickness a lot. Yeah. I label it as sickness because it was always vague. I remember as a kid going to a ton of specialists because I had like stomach issues that bled into other issues. And I remember like, especially in my younger years, I was always going to the doctor. I had this specific instance, and I talked to my grandmother about it recently, where I was in the hospital for several days.
Yeah.
What's funny is, and to people that don't know me, I was raised by my grandparents. And I've talked to my grandma recently about that instance of when I was younger, I was in the hospital. Like, hey, grandma, do you remember why I was there? Oh, no, that's so long ago. She doesn't remember a lot of this stuff. She's 86, 87 right now. Like, bless her heart. She's great. She was the best mother ever. But
I remember seeing her in class too.
Yeah. No, she would always come in. She would always like participate if she could. Or if she needed to come in there and grab me by my ear and ring me out for doing something, she would. But I can't remember exactly why I was in the hospital, but I remember I was there for several days, and they brought in a cart with a Super Nintendo on it.
Hell yeah.
And the game that was in there was two of them. There was a Legend of Zelda game, Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, and there was Donkey Kong Country. And I remember that what should have been an incredibly traumatic like experience for me, being in a hospital, like really rough. I remember in the last couple days, I was so sad when they said I could go home.
Oh, because they're taking the video games.
Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, no, I need one of these. And that's my earliest memory with like dealing with video games. And then it just sort of like went off the charts. I don't remember exactly how or why, but I got a Nintendo 64 and I got The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, which is my favorite game of all time.
You know what's weird is I felt like I knew that for some reason, and I was gonna bring it up. Yeah, okay.
I post a little bit about it on my Instagram because it's one of those things like Spider-Man, like other things like Star Wars that are just like huge to me. But the funny thing about that is The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time doesn't have voice acting or anything. Like back in the day, like everything was text and such, and I was probably 5-6 years old, and I couldn't read any of this stuff. I probably should have been able to better. That stems into an entirely different story of me being a dyslexic kid struggling with reading and such. But like my family would always take turns reading the games to me.
Oh, okay.
And I feel like that really like helps me build a relationship with my family.
Yeah,
helped them get involved in something that I liked as a kid. And then it just like provided such a safe space for me. And so I like imprinted on like games and such as a kid. And it just very much became a safe space for me. Yeah. That even as a 27-year-old, I find myself consistently going back to. So
I like that. I like to, like when you talk about chronic illness, I think it'll be helpful and it'll help spread awareness to like growing up with enormous penis syndrome.
Oh, 100%.
It can be traumatizing for you, for your grandmother, like even, yeah. And so
But
memory
you
loss.
get through it.
Yeah, you do.
Memory loss, exactly.
You buckle down.
Yeah.
That's cool. I like that response. That's good. I remember the very first video games that I ever played when I was a kid. Like we weren't balling out back in the day, and I remember this family that we knew that my aunt was friends with. That like they ended up giving us. I had a PlayStation 2. And this was in second grade, so I was like 7. I was 6. I was a little bit younger than everybody else that we grew up with. But so they gave us a literally like a Walmart bag full of video games. And the very first one that I ever played, well, I mean, like my dad got us Rayman Arena when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
And so like the Rabbids invasion and shit, that all came from there. But it was Dragon Ball Z Budokai 2.
Oh, there you go.
And I remember you hop around on little game pieces, and like I had no idea what the fuck I was even experiencing, but it literally changed my life.
Dude, hell yeah, man.
Spent afternoons playing. I've fallen out of video games in like my adult years. I just couldn't stick with it. The last game that I played like solidly, consistently was like Spider-Man and like Star Wars Battlefront, like the reboot. Yeah, but that was like it for me on video games. But I know that you were, other than like Zelda being your like favorite, that you had like reflexes like a motherfucker when it came to like shooting people.
Oh man, yeah.
Like Call of Duty, or was it Battlefront, or what was it?
So it was, oh man, it was so many different things. So I mean, around Halo 3 is when I learned about like online shooters and such. Me and my group of friends, they had gotten me into like, hey, here's Xbox Live. This is how this works. And I really just took to like playing games online. It was such an interesting experience, especially with the like, not the turn of the century, but like video games becoming a more like online platform just introduced so many different like aspects, especially to like a young kid, whether it be like community or like I learned how to be competitive through games. I wasn't an athlete growing up. So I feel like there was always like an aspect like of my character that I really never got to like get into, and that was sort of like this competitive nature. Then playing video games sort of ignited that with me. And I was also comfortable. It wasn't, I had played like Little League Baseball and like Pee Wee football and stuff growing up, but I was never good at it. That was what was really cool about video games, is it showed me that I had the potential to be good at something. And so then I just like steered into it a little bit. And I mean, yeah, that was part of my personality in high school, was just, I loved video games. I loved Call of Duty, got pretty dang good at it, showed up to some tournaments and stuff, and didn't do very well in those tournaments because I'm a very shy, like bashful, like I get there and I get nervous, mad nervous.
Coy.
Then, yes, that is a good word right there. And I just sort of fold. It's funny, like in-person competition with people I know is way different. So
yeah, I feel you.
I'd fold in those situations, but yeah, I got good at that stuff and I still enjoy it today. It's just really fun.
Do you smash your bros?
Do I smash my bros?
Sorry, I said that wrong. Do you play Smash Bros?
Of course I smash my bros. I do play Smash Bros.
Who's your main?
Oh boy, I play Fox. Funny story about this. So I go to Arizona State University. I've mentioned that. I started going to Mesa Community College. Ultra long story. I went to Mesa Community College. I dropped out of Mesa Community College after failing several classes, going like, oh, I'm just not a smart person. I'm not doing this. But in that semester that I was there, I have no idea how this started, but I was walking through essentially like the little student center. It's like a lunchroom area where you could go in there and just like chill out. I can't remember exactly what the name of it is, like the rec center or whatever. And I got to know these gentlemen, just these like young kids. I was 23 at the time, so a little bit like old. Community college obviously accommodates for a wide margin of ages and such. All college situations do, but I mean that's what's funny about community college. And I got
like
to
Community.
Yes,
like the show
exactly.
Community,
Like it is exactly like Community. I love it. I love community college. But I got to know this kid who was he brought his Switch, plugged it up to a random TV in there. Nobody was around him. He was playing Smash Bros. And so I walked up to him like, hey, how you doing? Like, do you mind if I play with you? He had an extra controller. His name was Hervey. Super cool guy. I don't talk to him today. I should.
I would say, did you show him what fucking time it was?
No, dude. I got destroyed, and that's what was so cool. Getting to like meet somebody, and this was clearly like his thing. I mean, he brought his damn Nintendo Switch to community college to play Smash Bros. But super nice guy, played him, got destroyed. And then suddenly a group just like over the next like several weeks formed.
Yeah.
And I think we had like 24 people that would meet every day to play Smash Bros. Everybody had like a different main in Smash Bros. I played Fox, and I slowly got better as I played with those individuals. But yeah.
Mine's Pikachu.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah, I do Pikachu.
I love it.
Who's your main in Mario Kart?
My main in Mario Kart. Probably Link from Zelda.
Okay.
Just because, I mean, it's Link.
He's one of
and I
mine
love him.
too.
But I really like Toad.
Okay.
I liked Toad until I watched the Mario movie.
Oh, it's Keegan-Michael Key?
And I still love Toad, but I always built up Toad to be something different in my
Yeah.
head than what the movie portrayed. And I was like, okay.
I feel like this is
cool.
probably going to make sense, but mine's Shy Guy.
Okay, there you go. Shy Guy's awesome. I'm
Yeah.
going to get Shy Guy tattooed on my leg.
He's my
It's going to be a
favorite.
part of this little
my-
leg sleeve.
One of the people who lives with me got me a Shy Guy because she knew it was my main, so she got me a Shy Guy. Like it's not on my little pedal board thingy here, not on my little setup, but I do have it. Eventually, it'll make its way over, probably to like the interface or something. But yeah, that's my go-to. I usually do him in black because that feels more like me.
Okay, there you go. I love it.
So my next question for you is: we've lived in each other's shadows alphabetically for the entirety of our like growing up. So what I mean is your last name is Reidhead and mine is Reed. So we literally graduated next to each other. Me and your cousin Taylor.
Yeah.
We sat next to each other in like any significant scenario where you had to be alphabetically grouped together. It was like
graduation or fire alarm practice.
Right. There was one. Usually if she was in the class with us, then there was one person in between us. But if not, like it's kind of crazy.
Us.
It's kind of weird to think about now because it's like how we're now sitting here. Like you're at my house.
No,
Like,
yeah, definitely.
But I wanted to know, and like not from a narcissistic perspective, but like, or at least from mine. What was your perception of me when we were growing up?
Oh man, that's a dang good question.
I'm digging.
You really are. I don't know. That's honestly a great question because, like I mentioned, we were like friends at certain times, and then we'd fall off, and we were friends, and we weren't. The truth is, me growing up, I was so in my own head that I felt like, and I don't know if like you can relate to this, but I felt like my entire school experience was me being embarrassing and everybody watching me. So when I was at school and like in hindsight, like growing up, like when I talk about like, oh, I was sick and I missed a lot of school.
Yeah.
I didn't learn until I was an adult that like I was experiencing a lot of anxiety, a lot of like medical responses to just being like an anxious kid.
Yeah.
So like looking at you, I felt like you always sort of gave off a bit of confidence because you were funny, I would say. You always, I felt like, had something to say. So, I don't know. Like,
Me?
I felt like, yeah. No, that's genuinely how I felt. It's so funny. Digging back then, I can't quite remember other than, like, you being a very, like, funny individual. Granted, I'm, like, going back to the beginning.
Yeah, this is early on.
Going back to the beginning, I remember you being funny. As we got older, it was sort of the same thing.
I usually hung back. I usually
I was
tried
about to say
wait.
you really like sort of stuck to yourself, and I feel like everybody can interpret that in different ways. But I always interpreted it as like you knew exactly who you were, and like you weren't interested in the like rat race.
Yeah.
Of like popularity and such, and this and that, and that's like.
There's me and Antaeus mostly. Yeah, the two of us. I don't know if you remember Antaeus.
I do remember Antaeus.
Yeah, just the two of us.
Yeah. Or I even remember like shooting junior high with Josh Smith.
Yeah, that was my dude.
Yeah, no.
That was
Josh
my boyfriend.
Oh, and shout out to him. His episode is great. So I don't know, looking back, like it's funny, and I've had this conversation with Allison of I regret a lot of like who I was in school because I wish I was still close with what I now see as the cool people.
Yeah.
In school, I thought to myself, these are the people I want to be liked by.
Yeah.
And now that I'm older, it's like, what did I just don't understand.
I understand what that means. Okay, so I'm going to tell you too what my perception of you was when we were growing up. I had it wasn't like a jealousy, but it was at the same time because I knew that everybody liked you. like at least from my perception, like everybody likes Josh. And then like, so in ways like I wanted to be friends with you or I wanted to like understand. And then like, so you said something to me one time, which I mean, I'm not going to touch on it yet. I'll tell you at the end of this.
Okay.
But when I was growing up, I remember like that you were just good at shit that I wanted to be good at. Like you were good at playing guitar, you were good at like singing especially. And like I remember just like times when we would talk and like we always clicked but didn't hang out.
Right.
If that makes sense. Because I remembered like certain conversations we had and I was like, I wonder why we're not friends. And then I would just forget about it and we'd move on. But I remember when I was in high school, especially, I pissed off my entire freshman year of high school because I was having these anxiety attacks. Like, so I stopped going to school. And then my rest of my high school experience was mostly me just like trying really hard to get caught up. The craziest thing I've ever had someone accuse me of being in high school was a bully. Somebody that I'm not going to say their name right now, but this kid who was a fucking dick. I don't talk to him anymore for this reason, because he was sending me like things that he was working on, like poems and stuff, and asking like my opinion, or
Right.
like we were trading lyrics back and forth. And then he accused me of being a bully to him in high school. And I was like, when the fuck did I have time to bully you, dude? Like I had a job. I didn't even hang out with people outside of school other than like 2 people.
Was this after high school or
This
during
is after high school.
Okay.
He told
interesting.
people that I picked on him. And this same dude punched me in the face when we were kids.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if you remember that. He punched me in the face. But yeah, anyway, when I saw you in high school, I always thought, or not so much in high school, I guess, like because there's a lot of years to pull from. I was trying to think about this because I really don't remember, but I remember like I always felt like you were sure of yourself. So it's weird for me to hear you say it like that.
Oh man, I think at the time I did. I think I was really good at lying to myself.
I feel you there, dude, because I also fuck with what you were saying about like these are the people that I want to like me.
Yeah.
To be real, no one really liked me. I don't think people disliked me either. Like I was very like under the radar. And then it was when I got out of school and then I started playing music. I started doing shit that I was interested in and I stopped trying to appeal to people. Then people were suddenly, like not suddenly, because I'm not going to say I have a broad spectrum of people that are interested in me, but then they would loop it back to me.
Right.
And it was so weird for me to people, like my band, when I was playing with Negative 32, got bigger than me. So then people would talk to me about like, oh, are you still doing the band thing? I'm like, how the fuck do you know about that?
Right.
Like, it was so weird how something that I worked on or created like transcended what I had done like
Right.
as a person. You
No,
know what I
that's
mean?
interesting. No, it's super interesting.
Yeah.
I think the thing is like, I think like we've sort of discussed, you were to yourself, so I feel like there was like limited knowledge on Cody Reed, and from my perception, you were always like very genuine to yourself. Like I feel like talking to you right now, and this is not meant to be like a stab, and I hope this isn't a stab, but you feel like the same person in all the good ways of like, prior to this episode starting, you know, we looked at some notes and stuff. I sort of like talked about how like I aspire to be similar to you in your meticulous nature of preparing these things that
Which is
you
crazy,
just
yeah.
fuck with. You know what I'm saying? Like between your music and this podcast, I mean, like I feel like you've grown in these significant ways. Meanwhile, when I like look at myself and I talk to you about wanting to be liked about like by specific people, those people didn't fuck with me.
Yeah.
In hindsight, and I see it, there's so many times I look back in my memories and I just like cringe because not only did they not really like fuck with me, it's not that they were neutral. A lot of the times I was a joke. A lot of the times, and this might be, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the movie Meet the Robinsons.
Yeah.
The Robinsons, I can't remember
The
exactly.
kid with the spiky hair?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. It's set in the future, right?
Yeah, so
Okay,
there's
yeah.
a character, the main villain, Goob. There's this, and it's so funny because I don't even, like the movie's great. I don't watch it a ton, but this scene is like burned into my brain of Goob misremembers. Goob is a villain because he thinks everybody didn't fuck with him. And so he goes back in his memories and goes, they all
Yeah.
hated me. And then it shows him as a kid and everybody's like, hey Goob, what's up? How you doing? And he's just like, he didn't see it at the time.
Yeah.
So I'm like weary of labeling individuals as like, oh, they didn't fuck with me. But in hindsight, I see it. And it's like when you're a kid in high school, especially like, so I'm going through my education to be a high school teacher. So I work with these kids. Hierarchies just form, and the weird meta politics of these groups just like happens and they fall into it. And these popular kids, I don't feel like worked on being popular, and these kids that become outcasts and had no good reason to be outcasts, the cards lie where they lie, and these kids adapt and just go along with it. So it's weird. So I don't even want to label those kids as assholes. It's just like the culture we grew up in, and I've heard you talk about it on multiple episodes, but our town was a little weird. It was religious, it was different, and it was small, dude. It was fucking small. So that's a thing we dealt with.
Yeah, so I'm gonna pivot just a little bit.
Go for it.
You have a talent, and I would call it a hidden talent, which is, can you tell me to the best of your knowledge right now what time it is?
Can I tell you to the best of my knowledge
what time it is?
I feel like you reached out to Allison for this.
No.
Okay.
I've been to your house.
Okay.
We were watching, you remember, okay, so Allison's little brother comes home, Ethan. We were friends for a long time, and he gets back from the military, and we go over to your guys' apartment. So we're in your fucking, like, living area watching. He's like, I want to put on a movie before we leave. And he puts on goddamn Reservoir Dogs. So we watched the whole thing. And then there was some time when we were in the kitchen, and it just came about somehow that you were really good at knowing what time it was.
Right.
And you did it several times.
And that's what's funny, though. What's funny is, and the reason why it's not going to work right now, is it requires me being anxious. And while I am pretty anxious right now, it's not to that level.
That's my secret cap.
I feel time. I feel time going. I would have to guess that it's probably 8:43 right now. I've not looked at anything. Where are we at?
I was pretty close.
What is it?
8:54.
Okay, not bad.
But still, no, that's not bad. So it's so weird to hear, like, because I had these just like absolutely fucking crippling anxiety attacks happening to me when I was like 14 or 15, and I had a really fucked up childhood. Like, I'm not gonna sugarcoat around that. Like, my mom knows. My mom listens. She knows that shit was like not very good for us when we were growing up sometimes. And so it's weird to hear, like, from somebody that I thought had their shit together at the same time that we were having a similar experience again in the same place, but just like separately.
Yeah, well, it makes me really sad because I didn't know. As a kid, I was like, I'm sick. I have belly aches. Right. And it's like, I didn't fucking know, man.
I have medical anxiety like a motherfucker.
And it's like, it stinks, and I don't want to like rag on my family because I love them to death, and they've been such a huge part of my life. But growing up religious, there's certain things that just get like swept under the rug, and one of those in certain families is like medical issues. Right. Like, you think to yourself, like, we could pray this away, or like you self-diagnose it as different things. Like, my sweet grandmother, like, once again, like, the most phenomenal person ever. Like, I owe her everything for raising me. And I can't imagine what it was like for her to like have like this just thrown on her, because the whole situation was like, my parents were like in and out of drugs and in and out of prison. So they just like couldn't raise me. Situations like fell apart and yada yada, and my grandma ended up raising me. But I lost my train of thought where we were going with this.
Oh, the medical problems.
Oh, the medical problems. She was trying to raise me, for one, trying to figure out all these medical things that were going on with me, but she wanted to label them as, oh, hey, like, Josh needs to like go to church. He needs to deal with all these things, like with his family and stuff. But the thing is like, going through all that trauma as a kid, like, you don't realize how much of it you internalize. And she wanted to like either take me to the doctor for things that she thought made sense, or just take me to church. And so it was that she was just playing this like back and forth game of trying to get it figured out. And it makes sense to me in hindsight that like she was just trying her best. And then in certain ways, like, would take me to the doctor when I really just like was trying to get stuff figured out with like just a messed up childhood. So like,
yeah, okay. So that's an important little nugget too, because I did the same thing. Right. I had for a long time, I thought that I did have a chronic sinus infection when I was a teenager. that stem from something. I don't fucking know. But I ended up having this sinus infection, and then it just like a whole slew of problems opened up afterwards. And then like started to find out that I had anxiety, and like there was people telling me that it was all in my head, and then there's people that were kind of feeding into like the hysteria of it.
Right.
So like at the same time, this is when I was like a fucking 14 on through like 17. I was like I was on Ritalin, I was on Xanax, I was on fucking Zoloft, I was on Paxil. Paxil fucked me up like bad. But like I was doing all these things, and like in intermittently also like experimenting with like faith practices and shit like that. And like it wasn't helping, and the real root of it was, nah, dude, you had some fucked up shit that happened when you were younger, and you kind of pushed it away.
Right.
But when you suppress feelings, they come back.
No,
they
definitely
don't just go away.
And that's sort of where I was leaning. I sort of got lost in my thought there.
Yeah.
But mental health is like awkward when like you take sweet old religious people, because they sort of believe like, you know,
Who
like,
mean well though.
yeah, no, they absolutely
Yeah.
mean well. And in a way, like I mentioned, like I live a phenomenal life. I'm a very like blessed individual. I feel like I'm spoiled. But in hindsight, I needed to know that like I had like a mental thing going on.
Right.
But to them, they're old school, and that doesn't like really sit well.
Yeah, it doesn't always translate the way that you would hope it does. And like
Yeah.
I didn't realize this until I was probably like I want to say like probably like 15 or 16, where I started to kind of like grasp that maybe I was crazy a little bit. Like I mean, crazy is kind of a harsh word for people that are like that don't want to be called crazy. But for me, dude, like I am fucking crazy. I already know this. I'm neurotic. I have anxiety. Every day of my every waking hour of my life, I have anxiety in one way or another, if that makes sense.
Right.
Sometimes it's healthy, sometimes it's unhealthy. But like mostly what I've learned growing up is to just like how to deal and how to cope.
Yeah,
and
just coexist with it in a way.
And I present it sometimes in a way where I feel like it's funnier to make it sound like I don't have it together, like, oh, I'm just a fucking anxious wreck.
Right.
In reality, like the not funny part of it is how many years of practice it took to be able to have a job and just like be a normal fucking person.
Yeah, little stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's
laundry,
what's hard. Yeah,
stuff like that.
I didn't get my driver's license until I was nearly 19.
Yeah.
And they like wanted to like put labels on it of like, oh, Josh is lazy or Josh is this. And I tried to explain to them like, I'm just really afraid.
You want to know something crazy?
I'm really afraid. Go for it.
This is something that nobody knows. I don't tell people typically. So for somebody who talks about movies all the time, I don't go to movie theaters.
Really?
I have anxiety attacks in movie theaters.
Dang.
So I haven't been to the movies since Captain Marvel.
Okay, there you go.
That's the last time I went.
It's similar. Like I feel similar because I've always wanted to go see -32. And I feel bad. I feel like, oh, I'm a bad friend, but that like makes me anxious.
No, I understand. There's a lot. I actually have a lot of friends that are like that, where they support from the sidelines. Basically, They're like, I love the shit, dude. Like, I'll listen to it or I'll support you, but I don't handle crowds very well. So I get that. Like, I mean, I appreciate you saying that.
Right.
Actually,
Well,
I mean, it makes sense.
Right. Well, and like I even had, oh man, I bought tickets to go see Foster the People. They're my favorite band. And bought them months in advance, was just stoked.
Yeah.
And then it was like the day that we were going to go, like we were going to drive over to LA and see them. And then I just looked at Allie and I was like, my battery's empty. And she's so supportive and sweet about it. And she's like, okay, like, do you not want to go? And I'm like, I don't. Yeah. I just can't. And it stinks. And I regret it afterwards, but I try and be kind to myself, right? Because that's like the coexisting part.
Yeah, you have to know your limits. And like I've always been like from the word go, as soon as I was able to, I started trying to go to as many shows. Like that's probably something that you didn't know about me. Like when we were growing up, is like my mom would let us like drive to Flagstaff in the middle of the week to go watch shows, but we'd have to come back and stuff. So like I was doing it when I was like 16.
Dang,
like
dude.
Just as soon as I was able to, I'd load my little brother up in the car and we would drive and go watch shows. Like, but like I understand though, and especially like after doing tours and seeing how like it affects other people that like are on the road with you and stuff. Like it's not for everybody, and I'd never even really. I think in some ways I was like quote unquote like apathetic about it, like and not seeing how it affects people and like that.
And especially if you want to do it, if it's like something that like it's a fire under you and you just want to keep going. So I understand that aspect.
Let's move on just a little bit. So we kind of already tackled a couple things in here. So like one of the things I was going to say is like you 15 or 20 years ago compared to now, you're a completely different person. So, what do you think, what aspects of your upbringing have shifted into adulthood?
Oh man.
Or maybe what stayed the same, I guess.
I've thought about this recently. Not a whole lot has remained. I feel like I've entirely shifted. Like I just mentioned, like looking back in high school, there was a group of people that I wish I was friends with, that I like wish I still had in my life. I wish I invested in, and instead I invested in like different people. There is like my close circle that has never changed. Like, I'm not sure if you remember, like Michael, obviously we know Zach, Wayne.
I'm going to redact it, but...
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And they've never shifted. I've never had any issues with them. Like, they're great. I love them. So whenever I reference like external people, that's sort of who I'm addressing. But I was raised like religious. I was raised Mormon. I'm not Mormon anymore. I'm not anti-Mormon.
And you're a tattooed freak.
I'm a tattooed freak. I'm a sinner. So I don't have those values, and I still somewhat struggle with my family because they're very much like still Mormon. And I don't have an issue with that. I think it's just like, and it's not even like necessarily the religion, but I think growing up, something that I struggle with, and I'm not sure if you like share this sentiment, but like my family, like my uncles, my aunts, like my dad and everything were like sort of heroes in a way to me. But when you grow up, you realize that they were just bigger kids.
They're just fucking people.
They're just people.
Yeah.
And that's like hard to reconcile with if you idolize them.
Yeah.
And you struggle with how to recontextualize that view of them.
Yeah.
So as an adult, like approaching like the big 30 for us, that's something I've put a lot of work into, is understanding the adult that I want to be, recontextualizing the examples that I have and have had, like, and forgiving them.
Yeah.
And giving them sort of a second chance, but also holding them accountable in a way moving forward.
Yeah.
Of like, this is like sort of my expectations and such. Not that I'm like the authority, but I am the authority of boundaries in my life.
Yeah, you get to control your own. You get to control your own narrative now.
Yeah,
like there's no external forces that kind of shift or create your reality.
Right.
In a sense, like my mom is definitely always been like a hero type figure to me. And when I think about it, like my mom's been very open and receptive to criticism, and I think that's kind of shaped me as an adult too, to be able to like own your shit. So if somebody says something to you, or like if you've done somebody wrong, it's maybe not manly by a typical definition, but I've learned to apologize. And I'm not as forgiving to myself as I am to other people, which is probably to a fault, honestly. But like I think it does make a lot of sense, like what you're saying, because you have to like recontextualizing is a really good word. And one of the things that I actually heard today, right before I pivot into something else that I have planned for you, that's a little bit more fun. I heard Ryan Reynolds say, I was watching this interview today with Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds. It's for People magazine. They were talking about the Deadpool Wolverine movie that I'm really fucking excited about it.
Awesome.
But he said, when somebody is anxious or when somebody has anxiety, you're constantly writing stories. And I never ever thought to reframe it in my mind like that. But when you have anxiety and you're thinking about like, well, what if it's this? What if it's that? What if it's this? What if this had happened? You're writing stories.
Yeah.
And when I reframe it in my mind a little bit, I'm like, holy fucking shit. This could be funny. This could be like, I always kind of sometimes I try to like lean into a worst case scenario, but like if you really did reframe it in your mind like this, what if this was funny? Or what if this was like not bad? Then like you can actually write a lot of good stories, and that's subconsciously something that I've reframed in like a lot of writing. That's what a lot of joke writing is too. It's just reframing shit.
No, and that's huge. Like a running gag that I have in my life is I label it as a sitcom. And it is. The dumbest shit ever happens. Yeah. And I'm just like waiting for like a little theme song to play. I'm waiting for the audience to clap or boo, because what the hell is going on half the time?
I feel that. I sometimes I'll do this thing with my girlfriend where she'll say something. Sometimes she'll say like, she's like subtle funny. Like she'll say funny shit when like no one's around, like when it's just the two of us, but she'll say something and I'd be like, if I could, I would look at the camera now.
Allie's my camera.
Look at this.
Exactly.
Break the fourth fourth wall.
Oh, I love it.
So I had a couple more questions that are lined up, but I actually think what you said was more interesting than what I had to say. But I do have a question for you. I know you're a video games guy. We started off by saying that you put the lit in clitoris. I said you put the rad in comrade. I wanted to know, are you like a crossword guy or like a words with friends or Wordle type of guy?
As a dyslexic, no. But I mean, I can try my best.
Well, that's interesting because we're transitioning into a game show
Let's
segment.
go.
It's time for Dirty Words with Friends. America's #1 game show, hosted by me, Cody Reed. The rules are simple. We're going to read our contestant a series of words or phrases, and he has to match them to their correct Urban Dictionary definition. Alrighty, folks, let's get right back to this episode of Visceral Musings. Alright, so here's what's going to happen. I'm going to read you a series of words or phrases followed by a multiple choice answer, and you have to match it to its Urban Dictionary definition.
Okay.
So it's called Dirty Words with Friends.
Okay.
Alright, one of them is from Urban Dictionary. So one definition is from Urban Dictionary, and the other two I wrote.
Okay.
So this should be a lot of fun. Number 1, we have mashed potatoes. Mashed potatoes. Is it A, sitting on your balls? Is it B, the colloquial term for an old person's genitals? Or is it C, the act of sexual intercourse when both parties are heavily intoxicated and just end up mashing their genitals together?
It is C.
It is
Final
C.
answer. Hell
That's
yeah.
right, yeah. Which one was your favorite definition?
The old man balls is pretty good.
All right. Number 2, we have swaffling. Swaffling. Is it A, the act of urinating into the fluid dispenser of someone's Swiffer wet jet, resulting in the distribution of urine throughout their moppable living space? Or is it B, the act of slapping someone with a semi-erect penis? Or is it C, the act of mixing semen and waffle batter and then cooking according to the directions on the box?
Son of a bitch. Tell me it's the Swiffer wet jet.
No,
No.
I wrote that.
I love that one.
I'm glad that you appreciate it.
Oh, that is great. I do appreciate that.
I was really proud of that one.
It was so well written. I love it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I really do appreciate that. I would just want to point out that these games, they take a long fucking time to
great.
write.
I love it.
Number 3, we have crushing soldiers. So, is it A, the act of sexually dominating an active military service member, or is it B, asking a veteran if their service was worth the nightmares? Or is it C, the completion of a guy masturbating and then wiping his little soldiers on a napkin, tissue, or sock, or etc.?
I think it's got to be A, but I love B.
It's C.
It's C?
You like B?
I love B. B is great.
Well, I'll take that. That feels good to me because I wrote both of those. All right, number 4, yoink. And I'm going to point out, I think this one is going to be obvious, but you'll see why it's in here. Yoink. Is it A, synonym for jorking your peanuts? Or is it B, a derogatory term used to greet police officers, a combination of the words yo and oink? Or is it C, an exclamation that, when uttered in conjunction with taking an object, immediately transfers ownership from the original owner regardless of previous property rights?
It's C.
It's C?
But B is incredible.
Oh, thank you. But C is so good.
C.
That's like such a great fucking definition of yoinking. Real. All right, and then this is the conclusion of the interview segment and also the final question for our game. Number 5, we have, I moved pages. Number 5, beef walk.
Beef walk.
So beef walk, is it A, the waddle you do while trying to hold in an impending and urgent turd? Or is it B, similar to a walk of shame following a one-night stand, but pertaining to the embarrassment you feel walking away from an argument you lost? Or is it C, going outside or away from the group in order to fart with less consequence?
I believe it is A.
It is C.
I'm terrible at this.
But every time you pick one that I wrote, I feel like I won.
But I was going to say that B is my favorite. B is great. I fuck with that. I
think B might be better than the actual definition.
It feels real. I feel like I may have had some beef walks myself, you know?
I've definitely had a couple beef showers where I'm like, fuck, man. You know what I should have said? All right, so that concludes our interview segment. When we come back, we're going to be talking about, and you obscure motherfucker, we're going to be talking about the final 5 episodes of Spider-Man, the animated series. So let's take it to the potty break. Are you anything like me? A washed-up, try-hard wannabe from some small town that no one's ever heard of, trying to create something that you hope people give a shit about? Well, then you know from firsthand experience just how difficult and defeating it can be trying to find your audience. And if you are not one of those people, then I would be willing to bet that you do know someone like that. And you may be asking yourself, how do I get this fucker to shut up? Well, here at Visceral Musings, we believe in homies supporting homies. Whether it's artwork, or podcasts, or music, or taxidermied animal paws hot glued to butt plugs, whatever the case may be, follow the page. Like the post, share it to your story, or even leave a 5-star review on someone's Spotify podcast page. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. At the end of the day, is social media real life? No, it is not. But these are real people with real lives that are trying to create something and make it matter to somebody else. And it's important to remember that everybody that you like started somewhere too. So support a homie today, even if it's not me. Let's get back to this episode of Visceral Musings. All right, so today we're going to be talking about Spider-Man, the animated series, more specifically the last 5 episodes. And so we know, or I do, that you've always loved Spider-Man. What is it about Spider-Man that has, are you ready for this? Webbed you in.
Oh, man. Speaking of just huge things to discuss that are hard to isolate, and I've spent a good amount of time thinking about this. Spider-Man is one of my earliest memories, specifically the episodes that we're going to discuss. Not necessarily the episodes, but the series. Yeah. My earliest memories of Spider-Man are I was being babysat by my aunt at the time, and I was laying down in the living room, and she always would like hook us up with a sippy cup and some snacks and Cheez-Its. And once again, earliest memory, I have no idea how old I am, but I know that this is just burned into my brain of an advertisement of this series, specifically a box set of certain episodes that were just being sold on VHS.
Yeah.
And it was episodes dealing with Daredevil, 2 episodes dealing with Green Goblin, and then Venom. And Venom is the reason I was dead set on I need this. Because, and I don't know if other kids felt this way, but scary stuff was so appealing to me.
Yeah.
I couldn't deal with it. It's not like I was like brave or anything, but it's one of those curiosities that you have. And Venom sparked that curiosity of like, this is a kid's thing, and he is so scary. And so I remember eventually getting that, and that was the tool for babysitting me. Was you would play this VHS. If you had to babysit me for like whatever, like my grandparents were really busy. They were running a business at the time. So oftentimes I would go with like, it was a cheat code. Yeah. So oftentimes I'd go with my aunt or my uncle, and I would always come with these damn VHS tapes. Like, you throw these in and this fucker's good. You give him some chocolate milk and just some snack of some kind and some Spider-Man, he's good. And so I was like raised on that cartoon. And so I watched those VHS tapes until they wouldn't even work anymore. And I think it came on Fox. I can't remember the exact channel. I'm hesitant to say Fox. It's Fox Kids.
That's what I was going to say. That's where I used to watch it.
Right. Yeah. And so I would watch it a ton as a kid, and I caught so many episodes. And that was like my first exposure to Spider-Man. And once again, I watched it for Venom. I was like, this is creepy. But what was interesting about Spider-Man is, and especially as a kid, is it felt like it was adult for me at least. And granted, as a kid, you don't really have a perception of, I would watch my grandma watch Days of Our Lives.
My mom was bold and beautiful, so yeah.
And so I had an idea of what drama was and how compelling it could be.
Yeah.
And that's what was interesting about Spider-Man is I'd watch other cartoons, or I loved like Blue's Clues, or I'd watch like Roly Poly Oly was one of them. But then you watch Spider-Man and you're like, what in the world is going on? And why are adults okay with me watching this?
I understand I understand that. That's good. Well, like when I remember like Spider-Man coming on, it was like around the time of like Osmosis Jones for me too. So like you're watching, there's blocks of when it would come on. So you're watching stupid shit like that. And then Spider-Man comes on. And like whether or not it's like, because I used to have, I still actually have it. It's in my garage. I wish I would have dug it out. But I have like Spider-Man in one of his like dynamic poses for the animated series. And so like it was character recognition for me, but then again, like you were saying, like I'm in Spider-Man's marital problems and shit. Like
Yeah, no.
I feel like I'm in it somehow.
It's Peter Parker 99% of the time.
Yeah.
And he's dealing with some like hard stuff, especially in that series, and even watching it as an adult. Like there's a ton of things where I'll watch a scene where I'm like, whoa, this is crazy.
Right.
Where he's chewing out the X-Men and like making fun of them as mutants because he's dealing with his problems and he doesn't know how to deal with them. That's my adult perspective. As a kid, most of the time I was just like, wow, this is cool.
Yeah.
And it's also a little bit like scary and I don't know how I feel about it.
Carnage is scary too.
Carnage is terrifying.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrifying.
Did I tell you I met Todd McFarlane once?
Oh, did you really?
At Safeway in Sholo.
No way. In
Yeah.
Safeway?
The fucking creator of Venom.
That is so awesome.
He was there. Like I recognized his voice actually.
Did you do a double take and we're like, what is going on?
I didn't see him. I saw his wife.
Oh.
So first I heard his voice, and I'm big on like I'll watch somebody ink for hours. Like
right.
Usually it's like some really talented artist with like a fucking UPS box and they're sitting there inking over pencils or whatever. He was doing it on Facebook all the time. He'd be like, today we're drawing so-and-so. Like sometimes it's Spawn, sometimes it's like Clown, or it's like whoever the fucking case may be. And he would do like John Leguizamo as Clown or whatever. And so it's really exciting. But anyway, I remember watching these videos so much, like in my early 20s or like late teen years, that I knew his voice like from memory.
Wow.
I can actually, and it's kind of weird, I'm not going to do it right now, but I can copy his signature.
Oh, that is so
I
cool.
learned from watching Todd McFarlane that I can copy people's signatures.
I've seen those videos of him drawing, and he's
Yeah.
one of those artists that make you feel like you could do it.
Right.
Like not in like you watch and it looks easy, but I mean the way he talks to you is like
Yeah.
almost like a Bob Ross of like, hey, you know what? You
Yeah.
just like decide to do it and just give it effort.
And he makes it fun too, because he's like, we're gonna give him some big teeth, like and he'll like
Yeah.
he does
Yeah,
like
he's fun about it.
Yeah, he, like alliteration or whatever to it.
Oh, I love it.
I heard him, I turned around, and I actually recognized his wife. And then I had 1 gallon of milk, and I was like, I'm gonna get in line behind him. And I was in the self check, and I like literally picked up my milk and went behind him, and I like told him like, I recognize you, like. And he was really cool about it, and he let me cut him in line.
Oh, that is so cool.
And he had a whole cart full of groceries, and he was really cool. And then they ring up my milk, and then the lady fucking ruined the POS system, like crashed or some shit. So we ended up getting stuck there for like 10 minutes.
Oh.
And I was like...
Did you talk to him?
I did for a little bit, and I was like, I'm sorry that I like kind of geeked out. I was like, I wrote... when we were seniors in high school, I wrote one of our big things for like one of our final essays for the year. I wrote about Torment from Todd McFarlane. I actually still have it with your peer edit on it.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's kind of funny. I just thought of that. God damn it! Why that would have been so good. Anyway, off topic. My next question is: who is your favorite Spider-Man and why? And I'm talking about like. And so it could be your favorite movie or like what is your favorite representation of Spider-Man? So like who would it be?
Man, that is such a good question. I have so many that I enjoy. Obviously, you knowing me, you and I really love Andrew Garfield's portrayal.
Okay, yeah. I'm
Andrew
glad you
Garfield
still do.
is great.
Yeah.
Oh, I still do. And I've never... Oh, man. What's funny is I've seen Facebook memories pop up where prior to The Amazing Spider-Man 1, I despised the idea of that guy taking over for Tobey Maguire. I referred to him as the Twilight Boy. Like, it almost reads as like Trump hate tweets of like of him just making fun of somebody. It's honestly terrible.
That's so funny.
And it's so funny because then I instantly changed my tune the moment that movie came out. That was like an eye-opening like experience for me because that felt to me like Spider-Man. So he's definitely up there. I love Peter B. Parker so much.
Oh, from like the
Into the Spider-Verse. I love him a ton. I feel like he's got to be up there too because I look at him and where they really I feel like excel with him is just portraying him as goofy and semi like incompetent.
Yeah.
It's not that like Peter Parker Spider-Man is incompetent. It's just
he's relatable.
He's relatable, but also sometimes he like struggles to care. A lot of the times he's doing things out of obligation. And that character like really excels in like the I don't want to hear about with great power comes great responsibility.
Right.
It like really like sells the idea that like this is a burden he carries, not something he is stoked on.
Right.
So I absolutely love that. But
I like his gut too.
yeah. Oh, the gut is great too. Because I mean, in my 20s, I've put on a significant amount of weight. I've
and
gained
so have I.
some, lost some, and
gained more back than I lost, and then lost some more. I don't know.
Exactly. So now it's kept it relatable, and it's also kept him like I really like with Spider-Man, and maybe you feel this way as well. Like we've grown with him.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
Or grown into him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also like seeing him, because I mean, my first real like comic run that I like read like start to finish, that I identified with a ton was the first like Ultimate Spider-Man run.
Like the Brian
Mark
Michael
Bagley
Bendis?
and everything. Yeah, Brian Michael Bendis. And at the time, like...
Those are two people you've met, too, right?
Yeah, I haven't met Brian Michael Bendis. I'd love to.
And I love Jessica Jones, too.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah.
So I love that Peter Parker, and at that time, like, he looked like me. I looked like him. Not like, specifically, not like,
right.
Oh, man, like, spitting image. But, I mean, we were kids. We were skinny kids. And in my brain, I was like, this is incredible. Like, this is so cool that, like... And that's what's so cool about, like, Peter Parker, and I really like... where they've taken Spider-Man of like everybody is Spider-Man. Like anybody can be Spider-Man. Look at the Spider-Verse. Like there's so many different ones to point to where you can be like now, like I see myself in this one like this. Or like something on Twitter, and I just love this, and this might be cringe, but I love this, but like Spider-Sonas, I'm not sure if you've ever heard of this.
No.
But it's artists going, this is what I would look like as Spider-Man. Like this is my persona as Spider-Man.
Right, yeah.
And they would draw themselves, and it's just cool. That stuff is awesome.
That's what I've always liked about. I think that so not only I think we've kind of already established, and I'm trying to operate without a bias, but we know Spider-Man is not only my favorite character, like favorite comic book character, but I think he might be the greatest fictional character ever created. I think, and like that I don't feel like that's a stretch because everybody can see themselves in Spider-Man one way or the other, and if you can't, it has a different face. Like you can have, there's a Ghost Spider, there's like Spider-Man Miles Morales, Miguel O'Hara. There's a lot of representation with Spider-Man, and there's a lot of, one of the things too with me is like, it's always been like Dan Slott and like Jonathan Hickman. Yeah. I love the way that they handle the character. But my next question for you is, why do you give such a shit about the last 5 episodes of Spider-Man, the animated series?
Oh man, I love these because it's my favorite animated series for Spider-Man. It was my first experience with Spider-Man. And it was also sort of like my first experience with a story coming to an end.
Yeah, okay.
And that, like, as a kid was... Even as an adult, I have a hard time contextualizing my feelings or, like, how exactly it hits me. To this day, I mean, like, another show, I'm not sure if you know about my enjoyment of this, but Adventure Time is something that Allie and I love.
Me too, yeah.
We've never finished it. We will go back and watch episodes all the time, but we struggle with this idea of it coming to an end.
Right.
Granted, now where we're at, we know it. There's more to it. They're making more, and there's like additional series and such. But
I did tell her to watch like Fiona and Cake.
Right, yeah.
Too.
And Fiona and Cake is great, and we love it. But we love it too because now we feel like there's more, but we struggle with this concept of an ending.
I understand that. Not to cut you off, but my favorite TV show, which, I mean, we've talked about my favorite movie on this show, which was I Love You, Man, and I talked about like how that kind of helped me heal parts of myself that couldn't tell my friends that I loved them or whatever. But there was a show called How I Met Your Mother.
Oh, I love How I Met Your Mother.
But I hate the way it ends. Yeah. And I hate that it's over. So I will rewatch the series up until the last episode of season 8 and then stop. Yeah. And I'll do that the same with that 70s show. Like I'll rewatch it up till that point and then I'll stop because I'm like, nope, in my mind it's perfect. And then we'll go back and revisit it.
Right.
Yeah. So I understand that. But so Spider-Man gets sucked into a cosmic sphincter and an intestine. Which is if you rewatch it, which I know you did, but like when you watch it, he really does just get kind of sucked into a cosmic sphincter. And but literally just before this, his wife, as it turns out, isn't real, and she fucking dies.
She dies.
And this is a kid's TV show, by the way.
She fucking dies, and it's not easy to watch too. It's not like a kid. No,
because he screams.
He screams,
and it's so fucked up. But he kind of ruins it too, because there's like this classic like cheesy fashion that Christopher Daniel Barnes does, where the blazes are you?
Yeah, yeah, Warren.
But where the blazes are you? But yeah. So anyway, he doesn't even get time to grieve. And then he's immediately shot across the galaxy to fight the strongest bad guys the Beyonder could assemble. So my question to you is, and I think this is a fun one, who would be your 7 other heroes? Obviously, Spider-Man's a key player. Who would be the 7 other heroes that you pick to fight for Secret Wars?
Oh, man.
Or sorry, to fight with you for Secret Wars.
Oh, that's great. what's funny is revisiting these episodes. As a kid, I hated his picks. Mm-hmm. I didn't understand them. I have notes right here written about how, like, as a kid, I just hated it. I was like, dude, Wolverine is the coolest motherfucker ever.
That's what I thought, too.
And you pick Storm. But as an adult, I'm like, this motherfucker knows what he's doing.
Well, they kind of also liken it back to chess.
Right.
So he's playing chess. He's not playing brute force. He's playing outright strategy.
Right.
So Storm. But one could also make the argument Wolverine would have been a more valuable asset than the Thing for brute strength because he didn't have ties to Doctor Doom.
Right. No, exactly.
Yeah.
But then, like, from his perspective of, like, and I don't know if, I feel like it'd almost be a plot hole if this version of Peter Parker knew how dangerous Doctor Doom could be.
That's true, yeah.
But it's, like, I would understand if he did know, I would bring the Fantastic Four, just because they are familiar. Granted, and there are a lot of other people that are familiar. I think that's such a great question of who I would bring. I don't, and then this gets into an interesting conversation, right, that I have with a lot of, like, adult comic book fans. That is one that I struggle with of, and I'm not sure if, like, you've experienced this. I experience this a ton. It bugs me. Of one of the conversations people want to have, and I feel like it's the only one, is, oh, who's stronger? They'll look at me and go, oh, who's stronger? Like, this person during this, or like, oh, Galactus during this. And that is not why I read to a degree. And I know there are some people that, like, have the power levels memorized of, like, oh, this is exactly who I would bring. So I think I'd probably go off of vibes instead of effectiveness for actually taking care of this. Now, in this scenario, are the villains the exact same?
Yeah.
Can I use villains to help me?
They're not. I mean, he says quote-unquote heroes.
Quote-unquote heroes.
And keep in mind, he does bring Black Cat at some point in time, too. So
is Black Cat the 7th? Or was...
She's technically the 9th.
Yeah, let's see here. Because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think it's 6. But then he counts.
Yeah.
With him, it's 7. And then what's funny is, like, the Lizard was basically a hero for all of it.
For most of it.
Yeah, so...
but I actually have a point about that. But anyway, go ahead.
I don't think I would switch up a whole lot. I might avoid the Fantastic Four just because I don't really connect with them.
Yeah, I if anything, I would have just kept Reed Richards.
I think I would have brought more X-Men. I think I would have brought...
Exactly.
Yeah, I would have brought more X-Men. I think I would have brought Scott. I would have brought Logan.
That's
even
what I
though
was
they would have
thinking,
been button heads.
Yeah.
I would have brought Jean. Damn it.
Or Beast.
Or Beast. Oh, man.
Hank McCoy. He's a
Beast
fucking
would
genius.
be great. No, exactly. And once again, like, dealing with that, like, portal and such. And granted, I don't know if Peter was thinking about that, like, in the moment of, like, let me bring some people that can help me cheat these rules.
Or Doctor Strange.
Or Doctor Strange, which he knew in this series. Like, he very much knew them. So, I mean...
I probably would have skipped Iron Man. Just because of the... So there's I want to point out something real quick, that the show is not overseen or written by Marvel writers. So there are different versions of these characters that exist in this show. Like, Captain America's version is much different than, like, what you're familiar with reading in the comic books, and, like, the version of Iron Man that you see is a different version than, like, what
significantly different.
Yeah, it's like its own universe.
Like, this version of Cap, I don't really fuck with either.
No,
so weird. Okay, man.
I have a couple things about that.
Go for it. I want to hear what you think of Cap.
Okay, so one of these things is, so Spider-Man losing Mary Jane. So I'm going to go in chronological order, but I definitely have shit about Captain America. Spider-Man losing Mary Jane and screaming was so heavy for a kid's show.
Oh, hell yeah.
It was definitely a lot to take in, even as an adult, where he screams on, like, a visceral, like, primal level.
You feel it. It makes you uncomfy, even as an adult.
Fuck, dude, she died.
Yeah.
Like, I get where he's going with it, but the kids show that we're talking about, it suffered so much from censorship. So, like, one of the notes that I have from this is, like, so they're not allowed to show punching. They're not allowed to show outright punching. They're not allowed to show someone firing a gun at somebody else, which is another big thing, especially when you loop in characters like the Red Skull. You're not allowed to show guns shooting at people. You're not allowed to use the word sinister. So they weren't allowed to use. They weren't allowed to call. Yeah. They weren't allowed to call him that.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that when I was rewatching it, and I was like, "You mean the Sinister Six?" Like, so because I watched the whole season, not just the last 5 episodes, so I kind of broke format a little bit. But the focal point shifts from spectacle to storytelling. So, what characteristics of Peter Parker or Spider-Man do you think that this show hit perfectly or encompasses perfectly?
Oh, man. Sometimes I think this show does things, honestly, a little bit better. And this is when we get into the argument, too, of like, when it comes to like, power levels of characters.
Right.
Different individuals write these characters. And you can feel how they see Peter Parker differently. Mm-hmm. And so as an adult, I always try and honor that, like, and respect, like, that they see the character differently or different aspects. But there is like a baseline, right? Where if we're watching Spider-Man stuff, there's like shit that we look for. I would say an aspect of Spider-Man that they did really well was his uncertainty. At the end of the first episode, he's very much like reflecting with the Lizard, like, I've never led a scout troop.
That's
and
right.
He's like humble about it. I mean, he's done so much by this point. This is the final bit of the series, and the series very much emphasizes this idea that he is the quote unquote chosen one. He denies this all the time.
Right.
Don't know how I feel about that, to be honest, but
and he's constantly getting his ass kicked.
He's constantly getting his ass kicked. The motherfucker couldn't throw a punch. So, so I feel like it does that really well. It does his kindness well too.
That's true. Yeah, I actually have a note about that.
There's
too.
a lot of authors that I think take him as he's just not serious all the time.
Right.
And I don't think that's the truth. Or at least my interpretation of Spider-Man. If I were to write Spider-Man, like he uses his like humor and such as a tool. It's also like reflective of like how he perceives situations. It's not just him. Like, I feel like, and granted, this is getting into depths that I don't understand with a certain character, but Deadpool, to me, somewhat, like some people will write Spider-Man like he's Deadpool, and like, oh, this is just part of him. And it's like, not necessarily. It's more complicated than that. So I feel like showing his kindness and showing that he does take things seriously is something that I really enjoy about this.
So not to get too profound on you, but I will say, just to kind of like put the two together, Spider-Man's wit, his sarcasm, and his humor is a tool. The wit, humor, and sarcasm for Deadpool is a weapon.
Right.
And that's the best way that I can put it. Because I've read, the character that I've read the most of
is Deadpool. See, and I know that you were the guy, and that's why I said, like, I don't really. But that's why I like Peter's humor is also like,
it's dry. Too.
Yeah, it's dry. It's not good. No. So much of the time, it's absolute dog shit. And that's another reason why I love it. I know that you might have complaints about this, but I think the funniest shit for me, the humor I like from Spider-Man the most, is when it's dog shit. Yeah. When it's Spider-Man 3 and freaking Tobey Maguire pulls up on a freaking armored truck and says, I'm the sheriff around these parts. I'm out there and I'm there for it. Like, fuck yeah, he's the sheriff. This is great. Another phenomenal joke from that series is he's clinging to the roof. Tombstone says, come down here and fight like a man. And he says, I don't suppose I can convince you to come up here and fight like a spider. That shit is cool as shit.
That's so
I'm
good.
27 and I will go back to that. And that's like my stand-up comic shit where I'm like, this is the greatest thing I've ever heard in my life.
My two are when he shows up and he hoses. So he fights Electro and then he like water hits him and then it cuts over to Spider-Man and he's wearing a fireman hat.
It's phenomenal.
And then the other one was when in so again, if this hasn't pointed out that I'm a big fan of Andrew Garfield, he goes to fight this street tough when he's looking for Uncle Ben's killer and he flings out like a switchblade or some shit. He's like, oh no, my one weakness, small knives. I love that so much.
Oh, it's so great. And that's good. Like such a huge thing that I think this series does really well. Like somewhat, like we said, we might have differences in opinion on this, but
that's why we're doing this though.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
And again, it's visceral musings. Why do you care about this on an emotional level? So, and again, you don't have to be logical. Sometimes I like shit that I don't understand. Some people like to be like, I don't know, they like to be submerged in water and dominated sexually. That's fine. I don't care. If you like your shit, I want to know why you like it.
Right.
It may not be a generally like approachable thing.
Right.
I did have a question for here, but I'm actually just going to skip over it and I'm just going to say it as a statement. Dr. Lizard over Professor Hulk. especially in like fucking like visual mediums where we get like Professor Hulk in Avengers Endgame.
Yeah.
Because the reason why we're talking about this is you were saying like, okay, the last 5 episodes of Spider-Man the animated series, which or just Spider-Man, whatever, it doesn't really, it's not a movie necessarily, but it plays out like a movie.
It does.
And so we get Professor Hulk in Avengers Endgame. Or right? Yeah, Avengers Endgame. We get Professor Hulk, and maybe even like towards the end of what is it?
Infinity War.
Infinity War. There we go. But I think that this iteration of Professor Lizard or like Dr. Lizard versus like Professor Hulk was so much better to me for some reason. Like in it, like you're kind of comparing apples to oranges, but like when you go off of like those two hot-headed characters that are like now like having the logic side of their brain coming forward. I thought that was real. I thought that was such an interesting choice for the writing, but it was so well done.
Oh, it was so well done.
Yeah.
Allie made a comment on one of my notes where one of my notes is just, I love the lizard.
So did I. Yeah, that was a big one for me.
That's the best you got, huh? But it's true. And especially at the end of the first episode, like the camaraderie and like relationship between like Dr. Connors and Peter. And at this point, he doesn't even know. He just knows him as Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Like, to my knowledge, I can't remember like Kurt Connors ever learning that Peter was Spider-Man at this point. I mean, he addresses him as Spider-Man. So if my memory serves, he doesn't even know who this guy is.
He doesn't know that he's Peter Parker.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is so great. And he like tries to like reaffirm him as like, no, you are the guy to do this.
Right.
And that was just cool. It's powerful.
So yeah, I don't have anything for that because I love the way that we're doing this one today because you've been able to hit certain points that I thought I was going to have to like work up to. But Spider-Man in this show, especially for like if you think about like Kurt Connors being included in the villains and then later is on the good guys team, yada yada, so on and so forth. I really appreciate that this version of Peter Parker is constantly trying to seek the good in people, even if it's like enemies. If it's his enemies, he's like, this is going to sound crazy. The fucking lizard dude is my friend.
Yeah.
And they're like, he's in there. And so the heroes are like, you're absolutely sure. And he's like, I don't have a doubt in my mind.
Right.
I love that about him. But so moving just a little bit forward, I had this. Okay, so I watched the fuck out of this show. I watched the entire last season to get ready for this one. How did Captain America, for the sake of continuity, how the fuck did he get his shield back from the Beyonder? Because what the fuck? If we remember correctly, there's the Forgotten Six. There's the American Six or whatever.
Right.
And then so what's his name? Fucking A. The other hidden guy who was like, whatever. The other guy has Captain America's shield.
Right.
And then he gives it back to him. I rewatched the episode last night to make sure that he doesn't go back into that fucking thing with so Electro gets sucked into this weird fucking time-space thing that holds him and the Red Skull fighting indefinitely. He does not have a shield when he gets there because he can't have it because he would have beat the Red Skull.
Right.
What the fuck?
There's so many things like that. There's so many. Oh, I can't remember. We played something in slow motion. Me and Allie watched the episode back, and I was like, does that make any sense to you? And she's like, I can't remember what it was. But there's so many things like that. Also, man, like even just Captain America in that series, and it stinks because I love Cap. I love
so do
Cap
I.
to death.
He's probably my favorite of like the MCU stuff. Is always Captain America.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And it stinks that I feel like they just sort of like missed the mark. But like remembering the 90s correctly, I'm not sure if I am. Cap is one of the few that didn't have a 90s series. So I don't think they had a lot to pull from. For example, like they had the 90s Iron Man. I watched that. They had 90s Hulk.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
That.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there wasn't a series to pull from, and I don't know if they like suffered with that. Like, who is this Captain America?
Right.
To try and answer that when your main goal is, well, we're writing a Spider-Man story, I don't know what that's like to deal with.
He's kind of shoot in a little bit.
Yeah, he is shoot in. So I feel like he is second fiddle, like,
that makes
huge
sense.
degree.
I thought you were talking about like just a side note. I thought you were talking about like a comic book series.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, I don't know, dude. I remember that Rob Liefeld big breasted.
Right. No.
Fucking,
Yeah. Definitely that drawing. So I absolutely love that. Oh man, doesn't even look like a human.
So what my question really is does this mean that Cap is like? So after the Beyonder just fucking willy-nilly sends people back to Earth, he's like, okay, my experiment is done. Sends people back to Earth. What the fuck? Did he send Captain America back to Earth with like no recollection? Because he also sent the Red Skull. Oh, so Doctor Doom sent the Red Skull and all the other villains back to Earth.
Right.
He just sent them back to Earth. He didn't specify whether or not they were going back into that like time capsule,
Right.
which is why I'm kind of hoping for some kind of revival of like. So I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself because you and I know, and if you're listening, you know, the fucking show ends on a massive cliffhanger.
Huge.
This is my cliffhanger right now because I'm like, I love Captain America,
Right?
And there's potential for you to unfuck this character that you perfectly executed in so many iterations of him. This is one of the not so good ones. This is a chance to redeem him in a way if he just kind of like shows up on Earth, like because that's what I was thinking. Why is no one freaking out? Like they're like, you don't understand that this is fucking Captain America, like
right.
the dude from World War II. Like he's in front of you right now, and no one's losing their shit.
Right.
So, I don't know. Anyway, I get too much. So
it's a lot to unpack. It really is. There's a ton to this.
So back to the original point here. The task at hand is Spider-Man. So this show, which is again like we were talking about, I said like it wasn't necessarily directly written by somebody who was a comic book writer.
Right.
It was this guy who was doing the show, and he was writing the show. He had basically creative control of all aspects of the show. This is the first foundation of the Spider-Verse, and so one of the things that I like about it is it's self-awareness. So it talks about the clone references.
Bad comic book plot.
Yeah, this is starting to sound like a bad comic book plot. So how integral was this show, do you think, to the Spider-Verse?
Oh, man, I feel like it has to be huge. And hearing that, like, tidbit, I never realized. I feel like that's, like, a bit of information that was thrown around recently. I've just seen in, like, the zeitgeist of comic book movies and such, that this was the first time that this happened. I feel like it was huge. Mm-hmm. It had to have been, right?
Yeah, it had to have been.
It had to have been, because I feel like so many people started on this 90s Spider-Man. Like, obviously, we're here having a conversation about it now, but...
Almost 30 years later.
But if there's something that I've learned about, like, comic book fans, like, specifically Spider-Man fans, is there's a shit ton of them, and they are obsessed with whatever got them into it.
Right.
And I'm one of those people that's the 90s animated series. Like, it just is, you can't, like, paint it in a way that won't make me like it, because I've imprinted on it. It's my thing. Like, it is what it is. But I do think it was huge because, I don't know, there's a couple things in, like, Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse that very much feel like this. What's funny is I do like the presentation of the 90s series, like, a little bit more. For some reason, it makes sense to me a bit more.
Yeah, I wish that I would have been a little bit older to understand, like, freaking out about there being several different types of Spider-Man at the same time. And then, like, in my little kid brain, I remember thinking, like, oh, there's, like, a gray Spider-Man, there's a Spider-Man with 6 arms or whatever.
Right.
But it wasn't clicking to me until I was older, like, holy shit, I'm totally missing it.
Yeah.
Like, if I could have rewatched this, like, imagine there is no source material, there is no Spider-Verse, this is the first time.
Yeah.
That would have been fucking huge. Yeah, I wish that I could have gone back and seen that.
And it's sort of like a less is more sort of thing. Like, I love like the Spider-Verse comics and stuff. Granted, I'm like not incredibly well versed in them. Like, I'll read bits and pieces, but I've been falling off of comics so bad for 10 to 15 years. But I love Into the Spider-Verse. I love Across the Spider-Verse. Into the Spider-Verse is more like confined. Like, hey, these are the rules for why they're together. Yeah, I love it. Makes sense. We get into Across the Spider-Verse. It gets bigger. When we get bigger, it's more convoluted, and I find myself asking questions. What I love about, like, the animated series is, and I hope this isn't closed-minded or, like, hurts people's feelings, but it's all Peter Parker. Right. I love everybody that gets to put the mask on. I love Miguel O'Hara. I was obsessed with Miguel O'Hara as a kid. And I was always so excited to see him in some sort of something. I was a little bit disappointed in Across the Spider-Verse. Not because it wasn't, like, an accurate representation, but it
didn't nail it for me.
I sold people on Miguel O'Hara for years. Mm-hmm. I was like, hey, dude, this guy is cool as shit. Yeah. And then they watch the movie, and it's like, he's sort of an asshole. And it's like, it's circumstance.
A little bit.
It's circumstance.
That's kind of the nature of the 90s writing, though. A little bit. It's more cynical.
No, yeah. And he definitely was. He's not Peter Parker.
No.
But it just sort of stinks that we all love Miles so much. And it was like, I hated that he was the bad guy. Obviously, the Spot is the bad guy. But when I watch, like, Across the Spider-Verse, all the Spider-Men are the bad guys to me. At least. Like, I'm with Miles 100%. But then I'm also with them too, like, in a different way. But this is what I mean by it's convoluted. It's like hard. You got, like, mixed emotions and stuff. When Madam Web points to the 5 other Spider-Men, 6 other Spider-Men over there that are just chilling, and the guy in the like Iron Man suit goes, so this is our leader. As a kid, my mind was
Yeah.
blown. It's like you took my favorite thing and you multiplied it by 6, and now there's a ton of them.
And they all have personalities that clash
yeah.
with each other. I think what you're saying too, just to like condense it into one point, is you. It's a grower versus a shower.
Yes, yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
See what I mean?
Yeah, there you go. That's a great way of
I'm
putting
glad
it.
we did this. So through and through, throughout every single timeline, for some fucking reason, and like you were saying, usually it's your jump on point. It's Uncle Ben.
Yeah.
So what was the emotional impact that scene had on you? Especially like, I actually kind of I don't really care about like, I'm not going to talk about like little kid Josh watching this one, but I do want to point out that like Spider Carnage was a good villain.
Yeah.
And Spider Carnage was so fucking like brutal that for the first time ever, I felt empathy for Ben Reilly.
Yeah.
Because for the most part, I mean, people hate on Ben Reilly. I've always liked Ben Reilly.
I love Ben Reilly.
And so, but I feel empathy for him in this way where like, because a lot of the time you're rooting for Ben Reilly.
Right.
But they shift it a little bit where you're like, fuck, man. Like it feels so much more, I don't know what it is, but I've always had like an affinity for Ben Reilly. I've always been rooting for him forever. But like in this instance, he's breaking my heart a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I want to know, like, more so like from the adult perspective. Also, I just have a side note here that Doctor Doom fucking rules.
It's so funny. That's one of my fucking notes. It's just Doctor Doom is the best.
I don't have anywhere to expand on that.
Yes,
really.
exactly.
It's just watch the show and you'll understand Doctor Doom.
It just is what it is. It is what it is.
But Spider Carnage was such a great villain that you end up empathizing so heavily for Ben Reilly, and then come to find out ultimately what ties all these universes together, and like and he has to deal with death and loss in such an adult way to like put his own shit aside for the greater good of the literal fucking universe. What is your takeaway from like that Uncle Ben scene where you get to watch Spider Carnage? Like, so Uncle Ben shows up and he brings the Peter out of Carnage, and then he ends up sacrificing himself for the entire universe. Like, you know what I'm saying?
No, I see exactly what you're saying. Oh man, that's unpacking a lot. Rewatching all of this as an adult, there's an idea that I pull from Spider-Man. I left religion like a long time ago.
Right.
And this sounds so fucking stupid to like say that like I take a fictional character like Spider-Man and I put it as my North Star of like, hey, this is what I'm shooting for.
Yeah.
I feel like these episodes show me that the best and worst versions of ourselves are so much closer than we would like to think they are.
And they're still you.
Yeah, and they're still you. I think what I struggle with a ton about Spider Carnage is it wasn't when like fictional stories try and convey like, oh, here's an alternate bad version.
Right.
They'll make them all bad. It'll be like, oh, okay, so from a child, he was just a dick and this and that and this and that. This Spider Carnage was Spider-Man a little bit ago. Was no different than our main character and was like killing it and doing good, but just like in comic book talk, just had one bad day.
Right.
had a bad day, and it just kept going and decided, you know what, like
he got papers knocked out of his hand and no one helped him pick him up.
Exactly. Nobody remembered his name.
Right.
And it just flipped. And so, yeah, you do have this like empathy for this character. It's so hard to see, but that's what I mean by like this worst version of yourself is just right there. And as an adult, like this is how I find empathy for people. It's like, I have no idea what they went through. I have no idea how good of a person they are or how bad of a person they are. And so I just like, I always try and have empathy.
Yeah, I think Spider-Man too, like just certain aspects of Peter Parker always remind me. And again, it sounds fucking dumb when you say it out loud to somebody who doesn't understand what you're talking about. But like, I didn't always have the best guidance in like morality.
Right.
So sometimes like as an adult too, especially like when I get it from watching certain things like this, it might sound dumb, but like one of the best teachings I think is like to view people as a work in progress and to like seek the good in people and assume best intention even when somebody is the worst version of themselves. Right. And I get that a lot from that's something that I just kind of adopted into my own personal life after watching this series. And so to kind of, I'm going to bring my point home. with my last question here, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. But so the series ends with so many unanswered questions. And like for me, I mean, again, I was kind of hell-bent on the Captain America plot points, but what happened to all the humanoids that they killed? But more importantly, what about Mary fucking Jane?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of heavy. And so I think that there's something to be said with like, all of us are still reeling from a cliffhanger that happened nearly 30 years ago. And so, if you don't mind, I'll give you my final thoughts, and then I'll give you time.
I'd love to hear them.
All right, so here are my final thoughts. I need a music break for that. For my final thoughts. So the final 5 episodes of the Spider-Man animated series basically play out like a movie with a story that brings us back to the fundamentals of Peter Parker and Spider-Man. And so what I really mean by that is, at his core, Peter Parker is someone who constantly views everyone as a work in progress and only seeks to find the good in people, even his enemies. Nostalgia aside, the main driving force behind these episodes, which like the last 5 episodes of this show, strips us back to the core foundations of what Spider-Man really is, the most relatable fictional character ever created. And the core of this show relies not on flashy, visuals and action-packed sequences, but just really fucking good storytelling. And that's all I really got for you. Like when I got to like really unpack what I felt about it, like on an emotional level, this is what really rocked me to my core about it, is like it's not this intense, flashy spectacle of a show. It's more just a really good story. Right. And that's more important to me. But anyway, I want to know what your final thoughts are on
You
Spider-Man.
pretty much like nailed it right there. I feel a very similar way. And that's what I love about Spider-Man. And I think, like, I don't know why I gel so well with him, and why a lot of the times trying to converse with people that also like comic books, sometimes I see it in a different way, because it's just him as a character and not necessarily the spectacle. I dress up as Spider-Man and I go to Comic-Con, and I love the spectacle. I love like his suit. I love all the cool things, the nerdy things about him. But at the end of the day, like to me, Spider-Man as a character, and especially what this series shows, is just things that I want to be, and things that like I see in other people. My family always like makes a joke. They'll refer to me as like Spider-Man and stuff. They know that that's my thing. And my grandma's so sweet. She has like a little mural in our damn kitchen. I had no vote on this whatsoever, but it's 3 pictures of me cosplaying Spider-Man, like a little shrine. And it's so sweet, and it's honestly so embarrassing because we have like people over there, and I'm 27 now, and she's like, "Look at that." But
you asked your now girlfriend to prom.
Yes, as Spider-Man
in high school. I remember that.
Yeah,
and
so
it made the yearbook.
It did make the yearbook.
Yeah.
She has that like poster that.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. And,
yeah.
And I would like to point out that she also dressed in she did a really kick-ass like Spider-Gwen cosplay too. Yeah. So
super cool.
This has been a big thing for you for a long time.
Oh yeah, it's been huge. And I mean, it connects in so many different aspects. Like I love the way that you summarized it, and I wish I could do the same, and I've like thought about it in ways, and to summarize the character, even summarize my thoughts on that. But I think at the end of the day, like Spider-Man is who I want to be, and it's also the people in my life. Like I see Spider-Man in like everybody, in like different instances. Like my siblings are adulting and are raising kids, and I see them, and I'm like, holy cow! Like they're doing that cool shit. Like they're taking like problems in stride, and they're conquering them in a very Peter Parker-ass way, and that's what I want to be, and that's what I think that character represents. So as an adult, yes, am I obsessing over this goofy comic book character? Yes, but Spider-Man is an idea to me that, like, I don't know, nobody can really take away, and I'm going to be a 75-year-old man that is striving to conquer problems at that exact same time in a way that I think, like, prime Peter Parker would. And that's just the way. And I see him, like, and my dad and everything, and like we've talked about, like, people go through issues, and it's the way that they conquer them that is Spider-Man to me.
Yeah. No, that was really good. I wish that I would have written that one down. So that concludes season 1, episode 1. Or sorry, fuck me, season 2 Season 2,
baby.
Episode 1. The fucking season premiere of... I say season premiere. It's hardly a season premiere, but that concludes the very first interview. And like that, this is something like, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you can tell because you're literally sitting here. Like, but like this is something that I wanted to do with you for a long time. And so I'm glad that we got to, and like there's plenty of other Spider-Man shit that we can talk about
for real.
Going forward. But one thing I like to do with every single one of my guests, which you know, because believe it or not, this guy's actually fucking listened to many an episode. I like to know, what is your top 3? It can be movies, music, TV shows, books, whatever you're into right now.
I've been racking my brain forever. This is in no distinct order.
Okay.
And I'm like sort of going with this on the spot. I've had like many a shower thought trying to piece this together. Also, I'm Flop Gang. We never did that, but 100%.
Okay, I didn't know if you were going to want to get into this one. All right, yeah.
100% Flop Gang. I'm gonna put Flop Gang on the list there.
All right, cool.
Flop Gang is one of them. I would say super fucking random and cheesy, but I fucking believe this. Supporting your homie shit is awesome. I love that you're doing this. I love that like our buddy Zach is doing a podcast.
Yeah.
I love that you're making music. I love that you guys do comedy. Like, I think that shit is just dope.
He's got me beat on 2 out of 3 of those things.
Oh boy, come on. You guys are both doing phenomenal. But I think like one supporting, but also just like I want to do similar things. Like it's such a cool thing to like see you guys doing this. Just like exercising creativity is something I've put on the back burner forever. So supporting your homies shit as well as being creative. And I think number 1, now I am going to make this a tier list. Top 3 is Allison. Allison Tippett's is number 1. She's my homie. We've been together for 10 years now. I don't know if you have kept that in mind, but man, yeah, 10 years. Yeah, just a couple weeks ago, actually. And she's dope. She's doing her thing, and
she is dope. I'll have her on here too. We've talked about it a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, but she sat there and watched Spider-Man. Well, shit, she's participated in all of my shit like an absolute trooper. I don't know if you've just been venting to your girl and it hits you like, holy shit, I'm talking about the dumbest shit of all time.
Yeah.
And they're looking at me like eyes wide open, like just interested. And it's like that shit's cool. Supportive people are dope, and I love Allison. She's great.
I like that too. I like Allison too. She is very great.
Oh man,
I like her. Basically, her entire family. So I'm into that.
Great people. Great people.
All right, so that brings us to the very last part of it. What is your? Do you care if people follow you on Instagram? Is that like? Are you into vanity?
I don't really care. I have so many people sitting on waiting for me to accept their follows. And it's not that I don't fuck with them. It's just, as we've discussed, I'm anxious, I'm shy, I do my own thing.
You know, I messaged you on Instagram about the Jonathan Hickman Spider-Man series that had come out, and I was like 50-50 on whether or not you were going to get back to me. And I was like, I wonder if this dude even still fucks with me, or if he remembers this shit.
For you, always, Cody.
That's funny. All right, dude. So the last thing I would have you guys do, I plug the socials. My social at oh my God, motherfucker. At that roller pig on Instagram, at Visceral Musings Pod on Instagram. If you get a second, stop and give us a 5-star review on Spotify. So concludes Season 2, Episode 1 of Visceral Musings. Josh, thank you so much for doing this.
Of course, buddy.
Thank you for coming over to my house, sitting in this hot guest bedroom.
Hell yeah, man.
And sweating one out with me. I really appreciate it. Well, you're always welcome to come back. And until then, I guess we'll see you next time.
See you next time.